Hey, what's up guys, it's CHENDA here, and today I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of my newest track called Mr. Bully, which will be out in NCS by the time this video goes out, and I'm so excited to show you guys the full result. I can't believe it. This track is really special to me. All the vocals, the production, the mixing, everything is completely done by myself, and I thought it would be cool to show you guys how I went about making this track, because I know there's a few people out there who kind of want to take some tips and tricks from what I usually do when I make a song like this. So without further ado, let's get started. I'll bring up the project right now. Here's the whole project by itself, and I know it does seem a lot when you zoom out and see everything. The 71 tracks and I think it was like 85 mixer channels. Excluding the master ones that I tend to use. Don't be too freaked out. This is mostly just empty space and automations. So in terms of like actual sounds, it's not actually too overwhelming, and it's actually less than you think. I'll play a little bit of the intro section quickly.
Hey Mr. Bully, won't you just see right through me? On the dying days when I ask for forgiveness or myself.
So it's very raw, it's very dreamy, and it's very emotional. I didn't want the emotion to be overtaken by too many elements competing against each other, especially in the intro section. So I'll talk a little bit about my vocal processing, because I know it's something that I'm probably going to be asked like a million times about. So you have the initial noise gate using the stock limiter just to take away some of the unnecessary sounds that I don't really want in the final track. And then here we have some auto tune. I will admit I'm not a perfect singer all the time. I'll just get that out of the way. But I do like to use auto tune just so I can be sure that some of the notes that I'm hitting aren't really too out of tune, and I don't really have to manually pitch every single note and make everything sound a little bit less authentic. And then here we have some compression using the glue and OTT, EQing using Ozone 8, just so I can have a little bit more control over some frequencies, and I can either take away some of them, boost some of them, and make my vocals sound a little bit more bright and a little bit less emphasized in the low end, I guess you could say. And then after that, there's just some extra EQing, some limiting, some compression, some more automatic EQing. I'm using Gullfoss here. I didn't really want to not use this plugin just because I really wanted to be sure that I was taking away all of the frequencies or boosting some of the frequencies that I kind of felt like I could have missed out on hearing. And then here we have some saturation using FabFilter Satin with the basic saturator preset, and then just some reverb with Valhalla. And then here we have the guitars. This is really what sort of centralized the vibe for the whole entire track, I think. So we have 3 layers. The initial bass, and then the initial like melody, and then a canto melody on top of that. And then all 3 together. So yeah, the intro section is like very simple. It's not too complicated, like at all. And then leading into the verse section, there are these reverse samples I made out of my vocals, and then also the guitars. And they do play at the very start of the track and throughout this track, actually, just because I didn't want to have like straight up, straight down transitions that kind of every track does nowadays, not gonna lie. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the intro. I'll talk about the verse section now. So the verse again is a lot more simple than most people would think that it is. In reality, it's not too hard. At least I hope. So here I'll just play a little bit of it. The lies that keep me open from the truth that keeps me holding on to your lies. What do you think about me when you This is probably like one of my more favorite sections of the track, apart from obviously like the whole drop section. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Apart from the initial like vocals and then the guitar stems that I showed earlier, there are also these harmony sections in my vocals.
Keep me open.
Just so the lead vocals don't really sound too dry and they kind of have some support. And on that note, there's also the vocoder stamps, which basically I just took the lead vocal and I vocoded them to the chords of the verse. I pretty much just used Manipulator. This is a free plugin, by the way, just so you guys know. I use this vocoder like all the time, especially because of how flexible it is for a free plugin. So you can pretty much control everything there is, including the format of the sample, the harmonics, even the stereo shaping, which I know could be done here, but doing it in here is a lot more manageable, I would say. And then following that, there's just some more compression, some more EQing, and just some reverb to make it a little bit more spacey. Going down, there's the flux section, which I did in Silent, and it's basically compressed, saturated a little bit again, added in with some reverb, some EQing. I'm taking out the sub frequencies and then some of the harsh high frequencies, and then just some extra stereo enhancement just so they sound a little bit more wide and spacious. And then following that are the pads. I'll play them separately actually. So they're both made in Serum, I believe. Yes, they are. Good. They pretty much both have the same post-processing. So basically it's just reverb, some EQing, taking out just the mid sections, taking away some of the sub frequencies, and then some of the harsh higher frequencies, and then just some compression on top of that. Following that, there's this separate guitar. And then following that, there's this atmospheric stem. It's pretty simple in the mixer section, just some EQing, taking away some of the high mid frequencies, doing a low cut, and then just some compression after that. I'll quickly talk about the sub. So this is also made in Serum. It's just a basic sine wave with some distortion using the decapitator, and then just some EQing, slightly boosting the low mid sections there. And then the drums are actually not too hard. So there's 3 separate sounds from the Cashmere pack, and then have this reverse sample that leads into these build-up loops. Oh, I didn't talk about the vinyl sample in the intro section. I'll just go over that quickly. I pretty much add vinyl to every like intro section that I do, just because it's a nice warm texture and it gives my intro section just a little bit more of a cuddly feeling, if that's the right word to use. I don't know. And then we have some impacts. Oh yeah, should I do the bit? Hold on. Impacts. On impacts. On impacts. That's not impact. Okay, cool. I was referring to what I did in my no pressure thing. Impacts. On impacts. On impacts. We need all the impacts, boys. We need all of them. And then here we have a sub drop. That leads into the impacts again. And then we pretty much just have some rises here that transition the verse into the small break section that I'll get into in a moment. So we have this normal uplifter, and then we have this one which kind of has like a tubey sound to it. And then all together it sounds like this.
What do you think you'll find me when you destroy what is inside me? I'll carry on.
So yeah, altogether, like everything sounds like so huge, and I actually like love it so much. So heading into the break section now, there's this little section before the drop, and I'll just quickly play that just so you guys know what that sounds like.
It's over when nothing's closer to what you're fighting for.
I really love this part. There's the usual vocal top line, but instead of having the usual mixing, there were these mixer slots that do change in this section. So we go from,
I'll carry on.
and then they turn on,
It's over when nothing.
and it's basically just this one EQ that takes away most of the lower frequencies and also some of the higher frequencies, just so the vocals have more of a radio kind of aesthetic, I guess you could say. And then coming down, there are these same guitar stems. And then here's a new bit. These are actually the drop chords, but filtered out completely. So you get this nice rising effect. I'll actually play the build section without them.
It's over when nothing's closer to what you're from.
So you see how nothing really happens when I take them away? It's so empty. Following that, there's the drums. So there are a few sounds happening here all at once. There are these orchestral hits. That triplet noise, and then there's this fill. And then following that, there are these extra hits with this nice little tom sound. And then there's also this nice reverse hit that I actually do with a lot of my tracks, just so everything's nice and intense when the kick doesn't really hit, and then you just suddenly hear that and it's like, whoa. So yeah, that's basically it for the break section. I'll now go into the main part, the main thing that everyone wants me to talk about. Not gonna lie, I'll probably get spammed if I don't show this, but you know, I might as well. I'll play a little bit of it just in case there's any people that are watching that haven't heard it before. I'll probably go over the drums first. So here's the kick. There's these reverse kick sounds that I talked about before. And then following that, there's these snare samples that I added in. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. And together. So the first one kind of acts as more of like the main part of the snare. And the second one, it kind of hits a little bit more. So yeah, and then continuing on, there's these two sounds that I added in to help make the snare a little bit more impactful and a little bit more engaging to listen to. Yeah, that's really nice. And then continuing on from that, there are these cymbals that I added in. It's literally just a loop, like cut up. Yeah, so they're cut up according to like how the kick's being played in certain parts, or how the lead's being played in certain parts, depending on like where I am in the drop. And then finally there's these tom sounds. And then here's like a little section that I did. They kind of chopped up to create this bounciness that I kind of feel like it was lacking a little bit without them. Following that, there are these little art things that I did. So there's two sounds going on. So the first one is literally just a square wave. It's compressed a little bit, reverbed out a little bit. And then this is just me reflecting. I would probably just cut up the low end. So it transitions just a little bit better and it doesn't have that nasty like low end to it. And then there's a second pluck preset. It's literally just some compression, some EQing, some more EQing to get rid of some of the harsh frequencies that I didn't really want. And in the plugin, there's some reverb just to make it a little bit more spacey. I'll go into the bass presets now. Alright, so there's a few going on. There's the sub that is literally just a soul wave. So there's a little bit of distortion, some EQing, and just some of the side frequencies being taken out. There's this little bass preset that I use. It's a soul wave with some distortion, some compression, and also some more compression, a little bit more distortion, and some EQing. Again, taking out some of the side frequencies in the low end, just because I wanted everything to be slightly mono in the low end, but then also like a little bit stereo in the high end, just because I wanted that nice texture in the overall bass sound to like still be there. And then here I just cut up some of the sub frequencies, and then I kind of cut up some of the treble frequencies just because they were a little bit too harsh and I didn't want them to conflict with the chords too much. And then following that, there's the mid bass preset. There's a little bit of distortion, some compression. Again, it's literally just a soul wave. Like it's nothing too like bougie, you know. Here we have the EQing. There's the low end being cut up, the high end being cut up. It's really only just the mid frequencies playing there. Again, I'm cutting out the side frequencies that I don't really want. And then here I use sausage fattener just to beef it up a little bit, and then there's some extra saturation using wave shaper. Following that, there's the Reese Reset. I tend to do this a lot. A lot of people don't really do this, but I actually like to do it just because I kind of feel like doing this kind of adds a nice texture to your overall like bass sound. So it's literally just saw waves, 16 voices filtered out, and then compressed, distorted, and EQ'd. The sub frequencies are taken out, and then the high frequencies are taken out. It's literally just the bass and the mid frequencies there. It's simple, but in my opinion, very effective. There's the stupid growl preset that I added in. I don't know why. Well, I guess it is dubstep, so, you know, it kind of makes sense. So there's a lot of effects going on. There's some hyperdimension, distortion, chorusing, filtering, compression, EQing. And then finally in the mixer channel, there's just some EQing and some compression. And then everything together in the bass section, it sounds like this. It sounds really nice altogether, I think. And then here we have the chord presets. I'll just stop that. There's 3 presets going on, but I used 5 channel racks because for 2 presets I wanted to control the lower notes and the higher notes a little bit more based on volume. So the higher notes are at 75% and then the lower notes are at about 80%. So there's 3 presets. This is the first one in Serum. It's literally just a soul wave filtered out. This is kind of like the main chord preset. So in its own mixer channel, it's just some compression, some EQing, and then just some reverb. And then here, some more compression just so every chord chord layers like nice and cohesive, some more EQing. And then here I actually use a reverb effect. So you see this automation kind of rises up the mix level. So as you can see, it kind of makes this like nice rising effect. Here's the second chord preset. I made this one using, I believe it was Massive. Yes, it was. And then it's linked to the main chords bus. This is actually for the build-up. This is just a simple like filter. As you can see, there's a cutoff knob, and that allows me to control like how much of the chords is being filtered out based on like higher frequencies. So as I go lower like this, more of the higher frequencies are being cut out. Eventually you're just left with nothing at the 0 value. And then continuing on, there's the last bass. Wait, no, not the bass. Oh my god. There's the last chord preset and Massive. A little bit detuned again, and it's linked to everything else. Side change using a volume plugin, and that's basically it for the chords. I'll go into leads now. So here I'll just play these on their own. Okay, so they're nice and dry. I didn't want too much reverb. I didn't really want any at all, just because I kind of wanted the chords to do their thing, and then I wanted the leads to do their thing. So that's the first lead preset. So as I play it longer, it sort of detunes a little bit more. Here in the effects channel, we have some hyper dimension, some EQing, mix channel, just some compression, and then the main leads mixer channel, we have some distortion, some EQing to take out a lot of the bass sub frequencies, some of the lower mids, and then some of the treble, just because again, this is sort of like a harsh sound, but yeah, I didn't want it to be too harsh, otherwise it would pretty much like become unlistenable, in my opinion, which is not what you want. And then some compression, some more EQing there, again taking out some of the harsh frequencies that I don't really want. And then here I actually raise some of the side frequencies that are kind of like more of the main ones in the sound. I did this because I did this with the chords. I sort of took these same frequencies away. This sort of helps the leads to stand out a little bit more in the mix amongst everything that's going on. Continuing on, there's the other lead presets. This is the second one. A little bit detuned, a little bit of white noise. And then here we have a strained like lead sound, literally just 5 voices and 2 oscillators on 2 different octaves. It's brought into this main channel, into the chords channel, side change into the master. So that's pretty much it for the leads. And then there are also these atmospheric layers that I added in. So for example, this one. And then in the mixer channel, it's basically just cutting up some sub and bass frequencies with some EQing, some compression, and just taking away some of the harsh frequencies with Pro and B. And then the final layer, this is actually a Kara vocalizer, and I actually tuned it so it actually adds more of like a atmospheric vibe along with the other layer that I just showed. It's brought into this manipulator plugin again, only to really change the format. I didn't really need to like vocode it or anything. It's compressed, EQ'd out again, getting rid of those harsh frequencies, and then just some reverb. Following that, there's this tube lead that I added in to the chords. It's literally just this square-esque table that I kind of found, brought into 16 voices. It's actually detuned a lot. There's some hyperdimension, distortion, compression, and then some more compression, reverb, a little bit more EQing, and then filtered out a little bit depending on like what point of the track is being played. And then this is just me reflecting. I would cut up some of the low end, for example, like say this. So this is before, this is after, but yeah, I kind of forgot to do that Oh well. So yeah, that's basically the drop up until these vocal chops start being played. So it's literally just, let me see if I can find the exact. So it's literally just that part chopped up, and then the notes are sort of like changed a little bit. The processing is actually like a lot. There's some compression, there's some camel crusher for some distortion, some EQing, again taking away some of the harsh frequencies that I don't really want, some reverb, some more EQing, and then here I actually wanted to expand the frequencies a little bit stereo wise, so I use this preset in Pro MB, and then this one in the Pro MB plugin again, just to add some more punch and some more like authentic leveling. So I changed the note there from F to D, and then that kind of falls into place with the drop chords a little bit better. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the drop. It's actually like not too hard, but when everything is put together, it's like so cool in my opinion. Okay, so the break section's actually not too different compared to the verses. It's just really like the drums and the extra vocal chops that I added in this section. I'll play it a little bit now. So yeah, basically there's the same line chopped up according to what notes I wanted. So they can kind of hear the same line being played, but it's kind of just pitched differently. And then there's these other chops using the same line just to create a nice little melody and to make this sort of section a little bit more catchy. Here, the same guitar. This is actually the same plug preset from before, but it's actually being played in triplet notes this time around. Same pads. Same atmospheric layer. The drums were from before, but just played in a slightly different pattern. Then down here we have the same effects, the same impacts, the same sweeps. And then here we have kind of the same art, but it's a little bit different. Again, it is a square wave, but I used the envelope to control the attack and lower down the hold, the decay, the sustain, and the release to make it a little bit more of a pluck sound. And then it's pretty much the same processing, just some reverb, just some compression. Again, like I would EQ it just so there's less low end, but that's just me, again, reflecting on like what I could have done better. There's this sub layer that I added in. This is actually the same break sub layer from before. I think it's EQ'd a little bit differently to respect the fact that there's also this Reese bass sound being played. Yeah, so it's similarly processed to the original drop Reese bass layer that I talked about before, but there's a little bit less distortion and a little bit more compression. It's kind of the same EQing, but this time I kind of took away a little bit more of the higher ends, just because, again, like I didn't really want too many elements competing against each other, and this was just an example of not letting that happen, I guess you could say. So yeah, this is pretty much it. Again, like as I said, it's very similar to the previous verse section, but it's kind of manipulated differently to kind of add something new to the table. And then following that, the rest of the track, apart from the outro, is pretty much the same, apart from like the new voice lines that I added in and the extra harmonies and then the drum loop that I added in.
Fade away from where we've been.
There's these little chops that I did. I kind of just recorded these, and then it has a similar processing method to like my original vocal stems, but they're actually like doubled a little bit more, and then they're EQ'd so that none of the sub frequencies, none of the bass frequencies are playing, and then also none of the treble high ends frequencies are playing. So again, this is nice like radio effect. And then the format's down a little bit because again, it kind of adds a little bit more of a dark vibe, interpreting like the voices in my head. I don't know. Following that, again, the section's like pretty much the same.
And then the lies that keep me open from.
And then this section is the big like orchestral section that happens before the second drop, and it's kind of more like a build-up than like a verse section, I guess you could say. There's these vocal stems.
I'll carry on.
There's also these higher stems that I added in.
I'll carry on.
Same vocoder.
I'll carry on.
Same ad-libs again. Everything's pretty much the same instrument-wise, apart from the strings, actually. I'll go over these strings quickly. So this is actually a free library called Palette Primary Colors. This is pretty much like the only string instrument plugin thing that I pretty much use at the moment, just because it's free, but it's also like so viable. So it's a Contact 6 library, I believe. Post-processing, there's just some compression, some stereo enhancements, and some reverb. Again, I would EQ this out a little bit just so other elements have a little bit more room to breathe and stuff like that. Apart from that, there's these cinematic loops that I added in. These are just compressed. It's just some reverb, and again, I would EQ this just so other elements don't really conflict with it. Following that, the drops, it's very similar, except the chops do play in the first half and the second half. And then in the second half, I added in these rides, I believe. Yeah, cool. So it's just some compression, just some EQing to get rid of the low end, and then some stereoizing just so they stand out a little bit more. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then the outro is also very simple. So when the outro is let in, there's this sub drop sound that gets played again. There's an uplifter that plays, and then there's an impact. I kind of wanted to make this section more of like a way of just me letting go of everything that's happened to me in the past, and it's more of like the moment where I just sort of cleanse my thoughts and just tell myself that everything's going to be okay, everything's fine, and happy days. If that's like a nice way to put it, but like, you know.
Nothing's closer to where you're.
So these are just vocals using the same line as the break before the first drop, but just filtered out a little bit more, especially here. kind of hear how there's a lot less low end going on. And then same, oh, this is new. So I actually added in a piano. This is the Lab Soft piano. I use this pretty much every time I want a piano in my tracks, but again, free. EQ'd, compressed a little bit more, some reverb, and that's basically it. And then as the track plays out, there's this atmospheric layer that gets played. And then these automations down here just sort of help to filter everything out as the outro starts to end, and I kind of just let everything fade out naturally to make it a little bit more emotional. So yeah, that's basically everything that I have to talk about for the track. I really hope you guys learned something from this, and like I said, when you look at this initially, especially if I zoom out like this, it does look like a lot, especially for a beginner like I once was. Admittedly, you know, everyone starts somewhere, but when you actually dissect like each sound that you use, it's not really too much. It's very simple compared to like what most people would think would go into a track like this. And you know, I would really strongly advise like practicing some of this if you want to take any of the tips that I explained in this video. Like, by all means, go for it. Like, I'm all up for you guys stealing my ideas. I actually like genuinely love it in a weird way, but you know, it's for the best. Like, I actually started out learning from YouTube tutorials like this one, or like ones that are in the style of this one. So yeah, I mean, you know, go for it, explore, create new ideas, and just most importantly, like, have fun. Like, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't having fun, like, for real. So yeah, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this walkthrough. If you want me to do more of these in the future, then please feel free to let me know down in the comments. I actually really enjoy making these, even though I do have to take a lot of takes because I can't really talk at all, admittedly. But yeah, please feel free to stream my newest track as well. It would really mean the world to me if you do. And I'll see you guys next time. Stay blessed and have a good day. Goodbye.